We are MMS Inspirational. We are a faith-based, music-focused podcasts created by producer Ronald Tyke Oliver. MMS Inspirational Podcast is the place to be inspired, encouraged, meditate, unwind, relax, reflect, and enjoy the goodness of God's Word and positive messages through amazing music. Listen to us on Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. Check out MMS Inspirational and be blessed.
We've been made endure for a night, but joy comes in.
Welcome, everybody, to another Age of Radio Conversations episode where I sit down with creators, entrepreneurs, small business owners, and have conversations with them about everything that they have going on in their business and the things that they are creating and bringing to us in the world. If you are new to this podcast, this is a podcast all about my business adventures and side quests. And this is actually one of those side quests that I love to do because I love having conversations with, as I said, entrepreneurs, creators, and small business owners. And I have a guest today named Original Poetry. And from a young age, Original Poetry always loved art and creativity. His poetry has been featured in many literary magazines, such as issues number 2 of the GGP Collective in 2022 and the Prairie Review magazine in 2024. And moreover, Original Poetry has published many poetry books on Amazon, which is really exciting. I'm excited to have this conversation. And also, too, there is a business aspect of this as well that Original Poetry has called Poetry Rootz, which you can check out, Poetry Rootz.my.canva.site. And Poetry Rootz is a poetry brand that promotes creative expression in its purest form, from writing, learning, content creation, fashion, and community building. But rather than having me talk about that, let's get Original Poetry up here into the conversation and see how he is doing. All right, Original Poetry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for all the back and forth on trying to get you to do this conversation. I live a busy life, and unfortunately, I just couldn't make it work. And we finally got the time to actually sit down and have this conversation together.
Yeah, I've looked forward to this conversation for a long time, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Original Poetry, I think a really good place to start our conversation, because I don't know a lot about Poetry Rootz, and I'm a business owner. Can you tell me a little bit about like the story behind Poetry Rootz before we kind of go deep into you and what poetry you've done?
Yes. So the story behind Poetry Rootz was, you know, me coming up with the brand to, like, you know, because I write so much poetry. I've been writing poetry since 2010, and I wanted to have a way to, like, you know, have my poetry stand out, you know that it's me writing poetry. So I decided to create a brand, and I came up with the brand Poetry Rootz because, you know, my poetry style of writing is really deep and meaningful. And it's based off of these 3 elements of poetry. So the spoken word, the written word, and the roots of creative expression.
Yeah. Now, so do you offer like one of the things that I was trying to understand? There's services that you offer vis-a-vis the Poetry Rootz, because it's not just like your brand where you're writing poetry. This is more along the lines where you offer like poetry workshops, like one-on-one sessions. Can you dive in a little bit about what those services entail?
Yes. So I teach a workshop. I teach 3 tiers of workshops. The first one is the beginners tier of how to write a poem. and then there's like that's like for beginners and people who never wrote a poem before. So if it's their first time writing poetry, then they can attend the beginners workshop. And then the next level above that is the intermediate version of the poetry workshop on how to write poetry, and that's a little bit more, deeper dive on different types of poetry like haikus, free verse, sonnets, things of that nature, and then how to structure your poem, and then the advanced is like how to like get your poetry published and different poetry resources and things like that.
Yeah. How long have you been doing the Poetry Rootz? When did you start doing this where you were offering the services?
I started in 2022.
Wow, 2022. So that was, you said the 10 years, but you've been this started in 2022, but you've been doing poetry for 10 years and maybe even
Yes.
before that, or was that when you wrote your first poem?
I wrote my first poem when I was in the first grade in 1995.
Yeah, nice. So you've been doing poetry even a lot longer than that, from the fact that, you might have written the poetry, but when you started really putting a lot of effort into it, it was maybe like 10 years ago, would you say?
Yes. Yeah.
So what have you found? Like, what's one of the most interesting things that you found from like doing consultations with people? Like, is it difficult to like help someone like learn how to write poetry? Because to me, I write songs, which can kind of be poems, but sometimes poems have to have like follow format. So is it kind of difficult when you're trying to teach someone or helping someone try to follow a format with the poetry as opposed to like say free verse?
No, I mean, yeah, there's different types of poetry that do have certain rules and guidelines for the structure and the different lines and verses, but free verse is a lot easier to teach because it's just you express yourself.
Yeah. When you sit down and do your writing, is it more focused on free verse, or what type of writing is it that you focus on?
It's focused on free verse.
Yeah. But when people are doing like the consultations and stuff, are you able to help them with the different types of like, I don't know, like the different like, I don't know, I remember something from like literature school or literature class when I was in like college, and it would be like we had to end with like an A rhyme. So the A had to rhyme with the last sentence in the structure, and then there was like mid structure, the mid sentences had to rhyme together. Like, do you do anything into that, or do you find that the free verses is kind of where more of the focus is for you and the people that are coming to you?
I would say that the free verse is more my focus because it's like when there's structure, it's like you're being pressured to like, to write and, say what's on your mind. But free verse is just like, you just say whatever, there's really no rules to free verse. It's just have a poetry prompt, or you can, write about your day or write about an experience, something that inspires you. It's a lot easier to teach free verse than just other forms of poetry. So that's why I start off with the beginners workshop, with free verse.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I have a clip from your documentary. I thought it was interesting. If you don't mind if I play it on here, because I think I want to talk about a little bit about how you got into the poetry writing. And in the documentary, the person that's asking the questions, he asks you when you started doing when you started writing poetry or how you got into poetry. And I think you're referencing that time back in 1995 when you wrote your first poem. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah. So I have this clip kind of cute. Let me, I'm going to play it here.
When did you start writing poetry?
When it comes to poetry, I would say I wrote my first poem in 1995 when I was in the first grade. It was a writing assignment to like write a poem. And I remember my first poem was called Footsteps Down the Hall. And the first two verses go like, I hear footsteps down the hall. Some are big, some are small. And like, that's all I can remember, from the past. But, that was really cool because back then, when I was a kid, like I didn't really take poetry, seriously. Like it was just something I did for, class assignment. I didn't really take writing seriously because in school all we had to write about was book reports, what else? Book reports, essays, like all the typical boring writing assignments that kids write about in school. And it's just like I didn't really like writing a whole lot. So I had no idea I was gonna really, evolve that into like writing poetry and like become really fascinated with creative writing until like 2010 when I took a film production class and my professor had the whole class do like a critique of our writing film production project.
So that's kind of like what I wanted to talk about. Can you tell me? So you wrote this poem in 1995, and then you weren't really into writing until you started doing a film school. What or film was it? A film class or a film school?
It was a film class.
Okay.
So what happened was, we was in class and we had this project we had to work on to edit a video project, and I did the video assignment, and my professor critiqued my work, and then he said, "Well, this will never make TV," and I kind of like felt some type of way about what he said, and I needed a way to express how I felt because I felt like I just didn't really have a voice at the time. I didn't have a way of literally expressing myself. I didn't really know myself that well. I was facing a lot of self-esteem issues at the time, so. One day I went to an open mic event and I heard this one poet. They were talking about how they went through a whole bunch of fake friends and people betraying them, and then they said, I'm gonna start working on myself. I'm gonna focus on the things that make me happy. I'm let everybody else that ever hurt me or upset me or like made me feel some type of way, I'll let them go. And that really stuck with me because it's like, okay, this person is expressing how they're feeling, they're expressing their experiences, and they're choosing themselves. They're choosing the thing that makes them happy, and they're doing it through poetry and writing. It's like, okay, that sounds interesting, so maybe I can do that too, and I just did that.
Yeah. So tell me. So when you started doing it, what was the when? So you went to that event. You kind of seemed like you were inspired from it, and then you started writing more. Then what was the next step after that? Like, so you wrote a few poems and then you went to like open mic nights and like read them, or did you start writing and publishing, or how did that part how did you get into that aspect of it? Or what was that road like?
The next step was to perform my poem talent show. So I had this talent show and I wanted to go on stage and read my poem. And my classmates were like really, really like kind of like they thought I was gonna mess up and be afraid and nervous, but I didn't really pay attention to them. I was focused on myself and what makes me happy, which was I told myself, I'm gonna get up on stage, I'm gonna read poetry, no matter what people think, and I did that.
Yeah, and then what was the reaction? Did people enjoy it, or was it more for you? Yeah.
They enjoyed it. Yes, they enjoyed my poetry. Ever since then, I began performing on stage at open mics, poetry slams, and I went from there.
Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know that's listening to this, what's considered a poetry slam? What is the difference between a poetry slam, or is a poetry slam the same thing as an open mic night just for poetry? Like, what's the difference between a slam and just going to an open mic night?
The difference between an open mic night and a poetry slam is a poetry slam is more of a competition, and it's being judged by people judging.
Oh, okay.
But open mic is more it's not there's not as much pressure. It's not a competition. It's just someone coming. It's just you coming on stage and sharing your talent.
Yeah, that's so. When you started, when did you decide that you needed to take it to the next level and start doing the consultations? I know what the year was, but what happened? So you were going and you were pushing out your publications, you were doing the poetry slams, you were, going out to open mic nights, and then you just decided that you wanted to help other poets in that aspect, or what happened with that piece of it?
Well, first I want to focus on, helping myself, discover my own voice, discover, just build up my self-esteem, build up my, self-worth, and find my sense of, find my self-expression, and through poetry. And once I got to a place where I was comfortable writing poetry and performing my poetry, then from there I began going on stage, performing, doing open mic nights. I did, my first poetry slam. I made it to the second round, and that was it. That was kind of like unexpected. I didn't really expect to really make it to the second round, but I did because I had some really amazing poetry pieces that people liked. Then after that, I wrote my first poetry book. I published my first poetry book called "Soul of My Words, Heart of My Mind." And a really interesting fact was the original title was supposed to be "My Reality," but I changed it because my reality is subjective. It's a subjective thing because reality is always changing. So I that that title and came up with the title "Soul of My Words, Heart of My Mind" because it's like my poetry has a soul of its own. And it's coming from my mind. I'm putting my heart into it. So that's where the title came from.
When you went to make your first book, what's the thought process about what makes it into the book? Like, are you trying to find a theme? Like sometimes, like I write music and I like putting songs together in like albums, even though I don't record them and put them out there yet. But the point is that sometimes like, okay, these songs all fit into this bucket concept theme, so I'm going to put them all in an album. When you're doing the poetry, do you tend to write poems that are going to go around a specific theme for the entire book, or do you kind of like find poems that you've written that you like, and then you're just kind of making like a volume of like a collection of poems that you've done throughout a period of time?
What goes into my poetry books is just me taking poems that I wrote over a period of time and putting them together.
Yeah. So how many books have you completed altogether?
I lost count. I wrote so many books. I kind of lost count. If I had an estimate, I'll say around like maybe 10 or 11 books.
Are they all published?
Yes, they're all published.
Wow.
Yes.
That's really, really cool. Do you also like print them and sell them when you go do like open mic nights or when you go and do the poetry slams, or do you just drive people back to Amazon?
I drive them back to Amazon. I have some books, Barnes and Noble. I have some books on a website called lulu.com.
Nice. Oh, Lulu. Yeah. I think one of my business partners, they did their first book and they published it through that site. What site do you think is the best one to use from your experience of doing this?
I would say lulu.com is the best because they're not, the guidelines are not as strict as Amazon.
Yeah.
When it comes to like the size of your book and how you put your cover page and like the documents for the Word document for your manuscript, it's really, really strict. They have really strict guidelines on Amazon. Lulu.com makes the process a whole lot more simpler. And I talk about that in my advanced course, my advanced workshop for publishing poetry.
Got it. So during those workshops too, you can take them through the process of not only like writing them, but also how to get stuff published, how to get all the stuff set up to be able to get your poems out there. Now, my guess is being a, and I could be wrong at this, but my thought process is poetry is not a super lucrative business based off of if you're just pushing stuff out there and doing like books. So do you also then do like a full 40-hour a week job while you're trying to do the poetry stuff and then also doing the business?
Yes, I do work a regular job. Yes.
Yeah. So how do you balance like doing that and then making time for your creativity, which has seemed, and I'd like to go into more about this here after this question. How do you balance the time for that? Because it seems like creativity and being able to do the poetry seems to be something that's soothing for your soul and beneficial to help you with things that are going on in your life. So how do you manage that, having a full-time job or having a job and doing this?
After I get off work, I just come home and, I start writing poetry. You know, I'll go on Instagram and post something, like I'll do a live stream. I have this live stream series called Poetic Affirmations, where I have these affirmation cards and I talk about different mental health things like trust your journey, or like, don't be so hard on yourself, or like different things about facing a critic or something like that. And it's all like really poetic because I'm sharing the tools I use for like helping my mental health journey and my poetry journey, and sharing that on my Instagram page. People like to see that kind of content when I post it. And then I have this other series of content I put on Instagram. It's called Poetry Seeds of Wisdom. And what Poetry Seeds of Wisdom is just little like uplifting posts that I put on Instagram to help poets with their writing process and help them like to stay motivated, to stay uplifted, and to just trust their poetry journey.
So you've mentioned a few times here too that poetry has been able to kind of like help you through certain feelings that you've had, mental health awareness of that you were dealing with, right, of things that were going on for you personally. So talk to me about how that kind of finds its way into your poems, and is it always a driver for how you're writing your poems?
It's always a driver for me because when I was like most of my life, I had a really hard time like communicating and relating to people. So through poetry, that's how I help to relate. That helps me to like step out of my comfort zone and be able to relate to people face to face. It just helps me to feel better about myself. And like it's like I'm proving myself to myself that I have a voice. Like what I have to say matters. I have a talent. I have a gift that's that somebody else who's going through a hard time mentally and emotionally.
Yeah. Do you mind? I have a poem here that you put on your Substack. It's called Messy Poetry. It looks like you released this to May 24th, just a few days ago. Do you mind if I read this, or do you want to read it? I don't know who my reading would be, probably not as impactful as your reading, but I'd like to kind of unpack this here and have you talk about it.
Okay, read it.
You want me to read it?
No, I'll read it.
Okay, beautiful. Love it.
I want healing, ugly healing. The voice cracks in therapy sessions where you finally admit you are angry at people who swore you forgave. I want the kind of freedom that doesn't need to look graceful, because flowers are beautiful, yes, but so are forests after storms. So are cracked walks where stubborn weeds still rise. Who wake up every morning despite having every reason not to? You call them broken, I call them miracles with bruises. So this is not clean poetry. This is sink full of dishes poetry. This is missed calls at 2 a.m. poetry. This is I'm fine with trembling hands poetry. This is crying in parked cars poetry, because the world keeps asking for performance while your spirit is somewhere barefoot trying to remember its own address. I write like someone searching pockets for lost light. And maybe that's all art ever was. Perfection, not symmetry. I am done editing my humanity into something easier to consume. If my poem stutters, let it. If my voice shakes, earthquakes shake too. If I spill emotion everywhere, maybe it's because I spent years being emotionally vacuum sealed for the convenience of others. This poem does not arrive with answers. It arrives with greasy fingerprints, with scars that still itch in cold weather. It arrives saying, I am trying. Do you understand how holy that is? To try again after disappointment made a home in your chest. To love again after heartbreak turned your name into rubble. Remain soft in a world that rewards numbness. So here, take this messy poetry, take these unfinished thoughts, stitched together with insomnia and hope, take these trembling truths. Maybe they're not elegant. Maybe they do not rhyme perfectly, but neither do people. And people, despite everything, still worth believing in.
That's beautiful. I think one of the reasons why I enjoyed it so much was the part about the people still believing like in. That's something that I tend to have a lot of hope for humanity and a lot of hope for people being able to find their purpose and to create the beautifulness that of whatever it is that they want to do inside of the world. One of the things that has struck me about this, it seems like from this poem, there's like a lot of, I don't know if I have the words to express it, but there's a lot of things where you're trying to make it sound like you're okay being who you are, but maybe there are people that are around you that are not okay with that. Is that something that's an assessment, maybe?
Yes.
So what was going on? You know, I know that you released this on Substack on May 24th. That might not be when you wrote it, obviously, but you know, what was going through your soul during the time of this writing? Like, were you feeling a specific way in trying to do this, or was this like thinking about past experiences and trying to explain something?
It was about expressing past experiences, trying to explain something. Like for most of my life, I felt, you know, really out of place. Like I didn't really fit in. I didn't really belong. Like I just felt, I don't know. I just felt like a stranger in my own body.
Do you still feel that way?
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah, and which I think is fair because, you know, so much stuff happens that we have to deal with on a regular basis that I'd imagine that could be that way, especially in the world that we're living in. You know, how important is it for you to continue to write these poems so it helps soothe you? Like, do you think that your life would completely change and your emotions would completely change if you had to stop writing poetry? Like, do you think there would be another outlet for you, or has this become the thing for you to get out all of that stuff?
I mean, my life wouldn't really change. It'll just be me not writing poetry no more. But
Yeah,
because I enjoy it so much, it brings so much peace to my mind. It brings so much joy to my spirit. I just don't have any desire to stop writing poetry. Like it's something like this. My poetry is literally a part of me. You know, me and my, you know, that's why I created a brand. You know, that's why I created Poetry Rootz, because it's a reflection of myself. It's an extension of my creative expression.
yeah. And you talking here, you mentioned here in the poem too, take this messy poetry, take these unfinished thoughts stitched together with insomnia and hope. So do you also find that, you know, there's a critique on, you know, calling it messy poetry? Is it in reference to the fact that you don't do rhyming inside of your poems, and is that considered messy poetry because it's not rhyming, but it still becomes a poem even though it doesn't rhyme?
No, it's called messy poetry because it's just like me just expressing it, letting everything out on the page. It's like abstract painting, but with words.
Yeah.
Like it may not make sense to anybody else, but it makes sense to me because, you know, I have a different life experience than somebody else, you know, so it's just me expressing my experiences, you know, unfiltered, saying, you know, whatever I experienced and putting it into like a poetry form. So, yeah.
It's awesome. So do you think that like from your poems, because it's such a creative process and because people have a different viewpoint of reading them, like someone could read this and get a completely different take on it from what you were trying to portray when you were writing it? So do you want it to be that way, or do you want people to pick up on it how you were feeling when you were writing it, or are you okay with it if someone else reads it for it to mean completely something different?
I'm okay with something completely different to somebody else, because my messy is not going to be your messy or somebody else's messy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So so as far as Substack goes, let's talk a little bit more about, like, I'm interested as far as like your social media journey. Like, how long have you been on Substack? Do you like that as a part of your content? Because I know you put poems out on there. You also have your podcast on there, which I want to talk about. But what success have you found using Substack? Like, has it been beneficial for you?
Yes, because I got my own audience, sharing my my podcast, and I've gotten lots of guests to come on my show. So a couple of days ago, I had a guest come on my podcast, and he spoke about like the same thing I spoke about. Like he had issues, like relating to people, just dealing with self-esteem, mental health issues, and then he discovered, like writing comic books and art and expression, just like me. And it's like that's what made that episode really meaningful to me, because I could relate to him, he could relate to me, and he's like he could pick up on things that I really didn't really notice I was really actually expressing inside my poetry and inside of a podcast platform that I created. So like the main reason why I'm a podcast is because I want to do a new hobby. Like I had a goal for 2026 to get into a new hobby besides writing poetry. So I took my Poetry Rootz brand to another level and made a podcast out of it.
That's awesome. So the podcast, it's called Poetry Rootz, or is it just called? Because I'm on here right now. So go ahead.
It's called Original Poetry Podcast.
Oh, Original Poetry Podcast. Nice. So you started that in 2026.
Yes.
That's really cool. Is it designed to have other poets on it, and for them to come and just talk about their work as well?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really cool. So how have you been going about finding guests to come on it? What's that process look like for you?
I met people on Instagram, Facebook. Yeah. I met people on, face-to-face in person. I create posts on Facebook, and, because I joined different podcasting groups. So there's one group I joined that talks about people looking for guests to come on the show and join their podcast. So I made a post on those, and then in those Facebook groups. And that's how I found my last guest. Before that, I had people from Instagram coming on my podcast and joining me and sharing their story.
That's really, really cool. So I feel that poetry allows us to have to find a deeper connection from when we're reading it, and obviously also from when we're writing it. In today's society, in today's climate, in the world, with a lot of upheaval or differences between political belief systems, religious belief systems, do you think people are craving more of a deeper emotional connection and authenticity to, say, art, or to something like to poetry as an art, or to painting as an art?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think causes us to want to have that deeper connection? Why do people gravitate, say, to poetry for a deeper connection?
Because poetry, it's really, it helps you to connect with somebody. It's something that's really, it's something that you can feel, but you can see and you can hear. It's really, it helps you to just connect with somebody. It's like I go to open mics and I hear people do their performances. It's like you can really relate to what they're saying. They're talking about what's going on in the world, and it's like it makes a whole lot of sense. They're able to highlight stuff that most people might not really be comfortable talking about.
Yeah. Do you think that from when you've done open mics and read your poetry, has it sparked meaningful connections with other poets where you're able to open up more to them and build friendships?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel like poetry opened so many doors for me. I've been invited to different podcasts. I met so many different guests to come on my show. I had opportunities to be on TV, a major TV station.
Dang, that's awesome.
And then just last week I did a poetry performance. I read a poem called As I Hear Music, and there was like a live jazz band playing their music. They're playing behind me while I was reading my poem.
Oh, that's really cool. Was it on? Did you say that one was on a television station, or was that just in a local?
No,
setting?
these are two separate poetry events.
Got it.
So the one that was on TV is called Outspoken Saturdays, and it's on the channel GBH.
Yeah, is that a local channal then for you?
Yes, it's a local channel. Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
That's really
and
cool.
Then like the jazz performance was like it's like a local. It was like a small restaurant in my where I live, and I went there and just did my poetry as I hear music, and then that we went from that was a new experience for me because I never had a jazz band playing while I read my poetry. It's just usually just me doing my poetry by myself, but that was the first time I had a collaboration with an actual band of musicians help with like playing and while I'm doing my poetry. So it's like it was really cool.
That's really interesting. That's really cool. Have you ever done it where you do like percussion and stuff while you read, or are you trying to do it to a rhythm or anything?
Yes, that's interesting because yes, I do have a drum. I have my own drum.
Nice.
And I wrote these two poems. I wrote this poem called Sacred Drum, and then Poetic Drum or something like that. I forgot the title of it, but I have those poems too, where I played the drums and I was like reading my poetry. It was on a live stream. It was on a live stream on Instagram.
Oh, that's really cool. So wait, did you say that's on your Instagram right now?
No, it was on an open mic on one of my followers' Instagram posts.
Got it. So you've mentioned social media to me multiple times. You're obviously on Substack. You're on Instagram. You do Facebook groups so you can find people to come onto your show. Do you think that social media has changed poetry for people as far as in a positive way, like where they can go out there and be out there more? Or do you think it hinders them because they're not going out there and going to open mic nights and they're just doing it on social media?
I feel like social media opens a lot of doors for poets to have their work put out there and be recognized and have their voice heard and their work seen and appreciated, and then have an audience that appreciate what they do.
Yeah, that's really cool. When you do your lives, like, do you get I try to do lives on Instagram and like it's just me talking to myself and then I just repurpose that content. Have you found like more success, like since you're doing poetry, or people kind of stay and listen and give feedback or things to you when you're doing them? And how long are those sessions that you do when you do those live sessions on Instagram?
Yes, I do find that I do find that I do have a lot of success on Instagram when I do my live streams on Instagram, because I'll have people request to come on and be a guest on my live stream and share their poetry, and we'll go back and forth, and I'll read a piece of poetry, they'll read their piece of poetry, and we'll go from there. And the live streams usually last about maybe like half an hour.
Yeah. What's one of your favorite poems that you've written? Do you know what? Do you have one off the top of your head?
My favorite poem that I wrote was called Poetic Rebel. So I can share that with you if you want to hear it. Let me just find it.
Oh, I would love to hear it.
Okay, here it is. They told me words belong in boxes, neatly aligned, properly spaced, but my syllables refuse containment. They spill across margins. In my life, my chapters have chapters. Pages, breaking cages, blazing stages. My voice is a storm brewing beneath the skies. Each word, a lightning bolt striking truth. When I speak, convention tremble. Rhyme schemes shatter under the weight of my truth. I am the sentence that runs on forever. The metaphor that shouldn't make sense but does. The question mark where there should be a period. The whisper that somehow drowns out the noise. I don't perform poetry, I breathe it. Let it seep through the concrete cracks in forgotten streets, where a language is still real, still dangerous, still rebellious, still authentic, eccentric, wordplay, prolific, present in the present, gifted, elevation, escalation, uplifted, still capable of starting revolutions, radical change evolutions. They say follow the masters, learn the rules. I say the masters were rebels first. Before their rebellion became tradition, before their fire became ambition. Call me whatever makes you comfortable while I make you uncomfortable. With the unfiltered beating heart of what is real. My stanzas don't march in formation, they dance wildly. Rhythm only I hear, drum beats pulsing from ancestors' hands. Features not yet written but already calling. I break lines where they shouldn't break. Create pauses where you must inhale the silence because sometimes the space between words speaks louder than the words themselves. I am the poetic rebel, not because I want to break things, but because some truths can only be told by breaking open the language first. My words are fist pounding on locked doors, my verses skeleton keys for rusted minds. I write in the language of the unheard, speak in tongues of the overlooked, because poetry isn't meant to be pretty, it's meant to be alive. If every poetic piece is like the bee, then my voice is the hive, and nothing alive stays neatly contained for long. So let my wild words roam free, let them challenge, let them question, let them break every rule in your book and write new ones in the margins. I am the poetic rebel, and my revolution starts with this very breath. I breathe in, breathe out, write poetry until there's nothing left.
Woo! That was beautiful. That was good. Why do you think that one? What makes that one your favorite?
Because it just has so much realness to it. It's just like it really. It's like when you hear it, it's like it touches you. Like it affects you in like your mind, body, and spirit. You know, it's like it's just like. How do I explain this? It's like it's really authentic. It's like it's not really something that you can just contain and say, well, you know, put in any category. You can't really label it as anything. And ironically, like that poetry piece I just read is in my latest poetry book called No Label. So No Label is more like it's more like an authentic, you know, rebellious type of poetry. Like it's something it's like a, you know, free verse, free expression of poetry. It's like a spoken word piece that's really, really real.
What? So one of the lines that I like that you had mentioned, the part about masters were rebels before they became masters, I think is how you worded inside of that. Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you feel that? I guess my question, I feel that people that are really, I don't meet a lot of people that do poetry anymore, but I'm not around a lot of creative people on a regular basis. Like, how can I put this? Is poetry, like, is it continuing to be like a growing? Like, I don't feel there's a lot of people that do poetry anymore, but I'm not really in the scene, so I really wouldn't know that, right? Because I almost feel like if you're doing poetry, it's not considered, like, when I was growing up, we would go to coffee shops, we would listen to poetry, we would write songs, and it was like a thing, and you were kind of like an outcast. Are people that do poetry now still considered like an outcast thing, or do more people do it now? I don't really know the scene very well.
I mean, we're not really an outcast if you write poetry. It's like it's more like a community type of thing. It's like a virtual community, and then there's like there's like an actual, you know, live community. Like where I live in my city is actually a whole community of poetry, and then there's like different programs that help poets.
Do you think it's a rebel thing to kind of be a poet?
In a way, yes, because you're expressing yourself. You don't care. You don't really care what people think about what you have to say. It's you being in tune with who you are and expressing, you know, what you're going through and sharing your stories. So yes, in a way, it is kind of like a rebellious type of thing. You know, every poet has his or her own style of writing poetry. And, you know, some people might express it through their body language. Some people might express it through different tones of their voice, some like high notes, notes, midtones. Some people might express their poetry by the way they dress.
Yeah. Do you find that when people are coming to like open mic nights, they express like they, maybe I didn't misunderstand it. So I kind of want to understand it better. What do you mean that like they express their poetry by the way that they dress?
Like different colors. They might wear like certain words, certain poetry verses on their t-shirts, or like for me, for example, I have my own merch store. So my Poetry Rootz brand. I don't know if you've seen it on my website, but there's a little, and I put my poetry verses on my clothes.
Let me get over to it real quick here. Yeah. It's right here. Yep, right here. I see. Yeah.
Yep. So if you click that tab where it says Poetry Rootz merch, it'll take you to like the page where all my merch and stuff is.
Oh, yep. Yeah, it stopped. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Original Poetry. I clicked it, but the way that this is sharing, it didn't. Give me 1 second, so I can show it here. Yeah, I started looking at it and forgot that it wasn't sharing for you specifically. Okay, there we go. So it takes you over here when you click that. Yep. My pen is my sword. Poetic aesthetic. That's a really good one. This one I like. I like it. The I am poetry. What made you want to put it on merch and sell it? Is it just to like so people, obviously merchandise, obviously people pay for it, so I don't want to just say that it's for money, but like, do you do it so that it's a better place for your art to be like pushed out of there, or do you look at like the fact that your poems are on it as a form of art?
I look at it as like a form of art. My poetry is on it. Like, it's something that I don't really see too many poets doing, so I wanted to like do it to stand out and let other poets and other people know that this is me. This is what Poetry Rootz is. This is what Poetry Rootz does. This is part of the Poetry Rootz brand.
That's really cool. So speaking of that, where do you see Poetry Rootz brand going in the next 5 years? Where do you want it to end up? Do you want that to be the thing that you do full time, so you don't so it's not like a side hustle type of thing, or what is it you're trying to accomplish?
I would like to have the whole retail store selling my poetry t-shirt and different merch, selling my poetry books, doing my workshops and my podcast. I do have a podcast.
Yep.
What else? And then just content creation.
Yeah. Now, how about for you as a poet? Like, do you practice trying to get better at like trying to find the words and to grow like your, I guess, vocabulary to be able to do stuff? Or is it you just kind of sit down? Is there like practice that goes into that?
Yes, there is practice that goes into it. Yes. But also like based if I'm inspired, if I'm inspired to write something, then I'll write it down. Like I get so many ideas to write different verses and lines. Like last night, I had a couple of verses that I had in my mind that I want to write. I wrote down. Let me just see if I can find it. 1 second. Oh, here it is. So I had these lines I wrote yesterday, in the middle, at midnight, and the words were, "You're taught not to think because you're taught not to think because intelligence is artificial." And then the other verse was, "The mind becomes intellectual property." So it's like all these different ideas coming into my mind. I just wrote down yesterday.
Yeah, and I know it seems like there's a reference or a play on words with artificial intelligence there, right? Where do you see artificial intelligence as it relates to poetry? Like, I'm assuming you as a poet would not want me as a person that's just trying to make money to go and use AI to make poetry and then put it out there as my own. Like, do you find that there's an anti-AI sentiment in the poem community or the poetry community?
Yes, because some people will think that using AI for poetry, like it's like it takes away from your creative expression. It takes away from your creative expression. You know, it's like it takes like the thing that makes your poetry human, that makes your poetry you, away from, you know, your writing style. It's like you're using AI to just write for you.
Yeah. So are you planning on, a couple more questions here for your original poetry? Are you working on another poetry book right now that you're going to be putting out, or where is most of your attention going right now?
Not at the moment, no. My attention is on my podcast.
Got it. Yeah. Where do you see that podcast going to be in the next year? Like, are you everywhere podcasts are? Or are you just on Substack, or where is it located?
I'm on Substack, Spotify, and Apple Podcast.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, what are some, for last question here for your original poetry, where do you see people, where can people go to find you, and where do you want them to go and see you at the most? Is it on Instagram? Is it getting into your Poetry Rootz website, or where can people go to get involved with everything that you have going on?
I would say Instagram. I'm on Instagram.
Yeah. Perfect. And is there any last final thoughts that you have?
No, I don't. No.
All right. Well, Original Poetry, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation with me today. Hopefully we can have you on back again. I love having guests on for a second time, because maybe we can go deeper, because we don't have to get through the original stuff that we were originally talking about. Maybe we can go deeper into some stuff. So I'd love to have you on again, but I really appreciate your time today. With that, anybody who is watching, make sure that you like and subscribe to the YouTube. Listen to it on the Age of Jeremy podcast. So if you're watching it right now, follow me everywhere on Age of Jeremy. And Original Poetry, can people find you on Instagram at Original Poetry? Is that the best place?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then I'll have all the links and everything in the description below for anybody who is watching this. So make sure that you follow Original Poetry. Go and buy the books on Amazon. I'll have links to the Amazon where people can buy the books, and we can go from there. Or do you want them to go to Lulu?
Lulu.com, yes.
Yeah, Lulu.com.
I would say both. I would say both, because I have books on Amazon and Lulu.com, yes.
Yeah, perfect. That's awesome. Well, thank you again, Original Poetry. I had a fantastic time. Thank you for making time to sit down with me. And everybody stay tuned. I have some more Age of Jeremy conversations coming up in a few weeks, especially with really one that I'm super excited for, which has to do with Junior Achievement of Arizona. So make sure that you guys stay tuned for that. Like and subscribe. And as I always say, be thankful, grateful, and kind. And we'll talk with you soon. Bye.